Esther 2 and 3. Alright, so as a little recap for those of you who haven't got a chance to recap yet, Esther 1, we saw King Ahasuerus throw this massive party, right? And at the end of it, he asked Queen Vashti to come display herself, right, before all of his guests. And she adamantly refuses. She says no. And because of that, she loses her position as queen. So she loses
She's
her
just sent out to the desert to wander.
And she's just thrown out to the ends of the earth away from King Ahasuerus. This sets the stage for chapter 2. Okay, so chapter 2, the king decides to throw a royal beauty pageant. Remember we talked about Miss Congeniality, okay, or Esther or Hadassah, to find a new queen. Okay, this is after he's already failed at war and comes home and realizes he doesn't have a queen. So all of the young women are brought to the palace for him to choose from, and he chooses a young girl whose Hebrew name is Hadassah, but her Persian name is Esther, and she becomes queen. Now remember, her cousin Mordecai told her, who is her adoptive father, but he is relatively her cousin, he tells her not to tell anybody about her heritage, so she has to hide her heritage, right? So he stays close, and he's checking in on her every day, even though legally he has no more responsibility to her. She belongs to the king now, okay? But he still shows up and checks in on her. So that sets up the stage for this next verse in verse 19, because we paused at 18, where the king had thrown a great feast in Esther's name, and he forgave some taxes, and he gave out lots of gifts, and we said if that was the end of the story, it would be a great story. But we have a lot more to get to, okay? So we're going to start in verse 19, where things are going to get very, very interesting very, very quickly, okay? So verse 19 says, "Now when the virgins were gathered together the second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Esther had not made known her kindred or her people as Mordecai had commanded her, for Esther obeyed," remember that word that we were looking for, obeyed Mordecai just when she was brought up by him. In those days, as Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Tersh, two of the king's eunuchs who guarded the threshold, became angry and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. Read, they wanted to kill him. Okay, that was lay hands on. And this came to the knowledge of Mordecai, and he told it to Queen Esther. And Esther told the king in the name of Mordecai. When the affair was investigated and found to be so, the men were both hanged on the gallows, and it was recorded in the book of Chronicles in the presence of the king. Okay, so an interesting twist here. It starts out by telling us when the virgins were gathered together a second time. But can I tell you, in the Hebrew, that word, the virgins, is not there. It is just when virgins were gathered a second time. That means King Ahasuerus really liked the beauty pageant, and he threw another one.
So he had his second.
He wanted to find more concubines.
Ugh.
Right,
We
okay.
have 400 or 500 more young girls.
Right. Yeah. So we are now having a second
Well,
beauty
he was
pageant.
only in his 30s, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So he had a little bit of an ego issue anyway.
So that brings up a curious possibility that he's deciding to throw another beauty pageant to find more concubines, okay? Maybe he really liked the first time around and says, hey, maybe we should make this a tradition. I really like this, But whatever the reason, they're gathered a second time, okay? It wasn't uncommon for kings to have lots of wives and lots of concubines, okay? While all of this is going on, Mordecai is found sitting at the king's gate. Now, it's not just a random bench nearby the gate, okay? It's actually a place of prominence. So elders would sit there, judges would sit there. So it kind of seems that maybe Esther, who's now the queen, kind of got Mordecai, her adopted father, cousin, a job. Okay, maybe she's the one who kind of got him in there to sit there because he's there every day. So why not give him some responsibility while he's sitting there? Okay, he's a good guy. Let's give him some responsibility. Okay. So in this position, Mordecai is very careful. He has instructed Esther to keep her secret. He's probably keeping his own. Okay. And she is diligent to obey him, even though, again, she has no legal right to obey him anymore. He's not her father or her cousin anymore. She legally belongs to the king, but she's still obedient to him, okay? So Mordecai overhears these two guys, these eunuchs, and they're plotting to kill the king, okay? So he overhears this plot. And he could have said nothing. This guy was a really bad guy, okay? This king was taking all these women, doing all of these things. He could have just ignored it, gone about his day, okay? And we're not sure exactly why these guys are so angry. Perhaps one of his girls weren't the one that was picked to be queen. And maybe they're going to take him down because their girl wasn't chosen. But either way, they have this plan. And Mordecai risks his own neck for a pagan king, and he sends a message to Esther, and Esther tells the king what happens, but she credits Mordecai. And she says Mordecai is the one who uncovered all of this going on, okay? So a full investigation is launched, the plot is confirmed, and these two men are executed. And here's where it gets gruesome, y'all, okay? Hanged on the gallows, what jumps to your mind? What picture pops in your mind when you hear that?
They were hung in a courtyard in front of everyone.
Okay, so we're talking noose, right?
Yeah.
Wrong. Okay, let me show you what the Persian gallows were. You take a gigantic stick, okay, and you put it in the ground, and you sharpen one end of it. And then you set the person upon it, and you pull down. And they are impaled on that and left to die.
Hanged on the gallows?
That is hanging on the gallows
Really? Oh.
in the Persian tradition.
Oh, wow.
It was incredibly brutal, agonizing, and public. Okay, so what does this now picture? Foreshadowing.
The cross.
The cross. Okay? See the picture here. Hung on a tree. Okay? So this is what would have happened to these two guys. They would have been publicly displayed for their act of treason. Okay? Imagine, I don't know if you've ever seen the Pirates movie, you've ever seen that one scene where they're pulling into port and they have the skeletons hanging there. The picture of, hey, we don't mess around with pirates. This is that exact picture. We don't mess around with plotting against the king. Okay? So, Mordecai saves the king's life. His good deed is simply recorded in the book of Chronicles, and that's it. No reward, no thanks, Mordecai, no nothing else. It's just simply recorded in the book of the Chronicles of the king. And again, if we were to stop here, it would have been a great story. But in the original text, it continues on. There is no break here, and this is why we did not break here last week, but we continued on this week. And it was recorded in the book of Chronicles in the presence of the king. After these things, King Ahasuerus promotes Mordecai, right? Right? Mordecai. He did something really great. He saved the king. What does your Bible say?
Amen.
Who's Haman? Who's this guy Haman? All of a sudden comes out of nowhere. Who's Haman, right? Right, so after these things, King Ahasuerus promotes Haman, the Agag, wait a minute, the Agag, the son of Hammedatha, and advanced him and set his throne above all the officials who were with him. And all the king's servants who were there at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai did not bow down or pay homage. Then the king's servants who were at the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you transgress the king's command?" And when they spoke to him day after day, he would not listen to them. They told Haman in order to see whether Mordecai's word would stand, and he had told them that he was a Jew. For he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw Mordecai did not bow down or pay homage to him, Haman was filled with fury, but he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone. So as they had made known to him the people of Mordecai, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, the people of Mordecai, throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus. Now wait a second. This comes completely out of left field. This is our twist here. We expected to read that Mordecai was promoted. And then everybody was going to go about their merry way and have a great happily ever after story, right? But this guy Haman comes out of nowhere, okay? And we're told he's an Agite. We learn that means he's a descendant of King Ahab, okay? The enemy of the Israelites. And his Hebrew name sounds like Heman, which means wrath, okay? Wrath, which is exactly what he brings upon the Hebrew people, wrath, okay? So, he is the one who gets promoted. And we have no idea why. we have nothing, are not told anything about why he's promoted. But he gets promoted above Mordecai. But God's not surprised about this. He's going to use this to get his plan in motion. Okay? So now Haman is basically second in command, and the king orders everyone to bow down before him in the gates. So it's all the important people. Every time Haman walks by, you need to bow down to him. Everyone complies except Mordecai. Okay? But did you notice that Haman didn't notice Mordecai's disobedience? It had to be pointed out to him. Someone else tailed on Mordecai and said, "Did you notice that Mordecai isn't bowing down?" And Haman goes, "Really? Let me go check this out." And he has to, go out there and test this theory that he hears. Okay? So Mordecai refuses to bow down. Day after day, the people around him are going, "Mordecai, why aren't you bowing down? Mordecai, you didn't bow down yesterday. You're not bowing down today. Why aren't you bowing down?" And eventually he tells them the answer. Because I'm a Jew. That's it. The end. That's all the explanation he gives. So why? Well, there could have been several reasons. Either he completely did not respect Haman and his character, which we'll find out, why here very soon. Maybe he remembers the enmity between the Aggites and the Israelites, the Amalekites. Or maybe he just realizes he's not going to bow down to anybody but God. Okay? We're not sure. Could have been a myriad of reasons why he's not bowing down, but he chooses not to bow down. Okay? And these people around Haman are tattletaling to him, and Haman just gets livid. He is ready to kill Mordecai for this. But he has some self-control. He's like, "I'm going to take revenge on this man. Who are his people?" And they tell him. He told us he's Jewish. "Oh, okay. I'm going to wipe out every Jew from the face of the earth." Remember, this is 127 provinces, covers half of the earth here. I'm going to wipe them all out. Talk about anger and wrath. Okay? And Mordecai is standing up to this guy. So let's read in verse 7 the rest of the story. "So in the first month, which is the month of Nisan, and the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, which is lots, so that would have been like bones or dice or cast lots, before Haman day after day, and they cast it in month after month until the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, 'There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of every other people, and they do not keep the king's laws, so that it is not to the king's profit to tolerate them. If it please the king, let it be decreed that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who have charge over the king's business, that they may put it into the king's treasury.' So the king took off his signet ring off of his hand and gave it to Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews. And the king said to Haman, 'The money is given to you, the people also, and do with them as it seems good to you.'" Y'all, we should shudder at the end of that. Okay? So verse 7 tells us we are now in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus' reign. That means Esther's been queen for about 5 years. Okay, so we fast forwarded just a little bit here. And we're told that it's Nisan, which is about March or April. Okay? Now, Exodus tells us that this is a very important month in the life of the Jews. This is Passover. Okay? And this becomes very significant. Okay? So Haman decides that he's going to put a plot in place. And he goes and decides to leave it to chance, which is very interesting because he could have just picked any date on the calendar. He could have thrown a dart, anything like that. He casts lots, called pur, to pick a day of destruction for the Jews. You see the plotting and the mastermind going on here, okay? So he doesn't leave, he leaves their doom to chance. But when we find out that God is in control of all of that, because Proverbs 16:33 says, "The lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord." Okay? So the Lord controls the casting of lots. Okay? So the date is chosen, the 13th day of the 12th month. This gives the Jewish people about 11 months to wait, to worry, to fear Haman.
Do the Jews
We're getting ready to find out how they figure out. Okay, so Haman goes to the king, which means that he's plotting and planning all of this before he ever goes and talks to the king. So he goes and talks to the king, but notice his strategy. He never mentions the people by name. He does not say the Jews. He says, there's this people among our people. They're different from us. They don't follow your laws. Okay? They're a problem. You shouldn't tolerate them. You hear the language that he's using to separate out the Jewish people from the Persians, okay? But these are the same people who have intermingled with them for the last 70 to 100 years, okay? And Haman offers 10,000 talents of silver. That is millions of dollars in US dollars, okay? That's to sweeten the deal, because he knows King Ahasuerus has used all of his money to lose his war. So his coffers are starting to be emptied. So Haman knows this king inside and out, okay? And you wonder where Haman plans on getting this money? Well, it tells us he's going to confiscate it from the dead Jews because they no longer need it. If they're all dead, we can confiscate their lands and their buildings and their riches and their farmlands and their cattle and everything else they own because they're dead. They don't need it. And then it all becomes ours, okay? Now the king likes this plan, and he takes off his signet ring, and we don't understand the symbol there. That would have been all of his power in the ring, because when the decree went forth, they poured a little bit of wax on there, and the king would have to put his ring symbol on there for it to be royal decree. He hands it to Haman, and he says, do what you will. Just do whatever you want to do. Sounds good. I'm on board. Do whatever you want. Ask no follow-up questions.
That's really dangerous. I mean,
Very dangerous.
I mean, who's to say Haman just wanted to turn around, pull out a dagger, and slit his throat right then and there? He now has the king's ring.
He now has the king's ring, and he can decree whatever he wants to in the name of the king. Okay, so that should absolutely make us shudder when the king says, do whatever you want, and drops his signet ring into Haman's open hand. Okay? So let's find out the rest of the story here. Verse 12. Then the king's scribes were summoned on the 13th day of the first month, and an edict according to all that Haman commanded was written to the king's straps and to the governors of over all the princes, provinces, and to the officials and of the peoples, to every province in its own script and every people in its own language. It was written in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed with the king's signet ring. Letters were sent by carriers to all the king's provinces with instructions to destroy, to kill, to annihilate all Jews, young and old, women and children, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. Okay? A copy of that document was to be issued as a decree in every province by proclamation of all the peoples to be ready that day. The couriers went out hurriedly by the order of the king, and the decree was issued in Susa, the citadel, the capital. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was thrown into confusion. The twists that are going on in this story, okay? So these royal scribes are summoned, and they have to write down the decree in multiple different languages in multiple different ways, and it's sent out to all the 127 different provinces. 11 months from now, everyone is to rise up and kill every Jew. Men, women, children, young, old, everybody. No one is to be spared.
Now, is that when the Passover is the 11th month?
So we're in Passover right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
in the first month.
Okay.
So it is Passover and this decree is set out.
Mhm.
Okay? So they are getting ready to enjoy Passover. And then this decree is sent that they're going to be annihilated. Now, if you don't understand the significance of Passover, Passover was a celebration that God was going to deliver them out of the hands of Egypt and had protected them and brought them through all of these plagues and was getting ready to deliver them and give them their own land. And now we're sitting in Persia, living our life, and now you have this decree that shows up that you're going to die in 11 months. All of it. Not just the men. This is not war. This is genocide. All of you are going to die. And rightly so, we hear, and the city was thrown into confusion because they have no idea what happened behind the scenes. They weren't in the palace. They didn't understand what was going on. There wasn't a reason given of why all of this has happened. It's just instructions to not just murder, to kill, annihilate, and destroy. If you know anything about the Hebrew language, when you repeat something 3 times, it means business. They are going to wipe them off of the face of the earth and plunder all of their goods. Okay? And they don't understand what's happening. Why is God allowing all of this to happen? We don't even know why this is happening to us. We don't get an explanation that one Jew decided to stand up instead of bow down. They didn't understand all of that. They had no idea why all this was happening. Okay? So the Jews are out there just going, where is God in all of this? What in the world is happening? We have 11 months to get ready to die and all of our stuff taken? Even this timing feels cruel. We're celebrating Passover. This incredible remembrance of what God did for us, and now he's just going to let us die here? That's it? That's all we got? And now we're just going to die here? They were trying to remember God's deliverance, and yet they're facing annihilation another time. And they have no idea why. Okay? And yet, the king and Haman, they sit down and have a drink. They toast each other and what they're getting ready to do. The level of evil, the level of scheming that we have going on here. Because one man got offended, because one man chose not to bow down. Now every Jew's neck is on the line. And they're sitting there toasting each other.
And the one man that didn't bow down is the man that theoretically saved the king's life. Crazy.
Yeah. And they're toasting each other. And the king is a complete pawn in all of this. Okay? So let's pause there.